The mystery has lasted for more than a decade and still remains unsolved. 11 years after the disappearance, and nearly 7 years since the last search attempt, the quest to trace Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 has officially returned. But why now? What prompted the Malaysian authorities to give the green light for a new search? And why is the company behind this mission so confident that it has agreed to a no-find, no-fee deal? Those questions will be addressed in today's video. First, let's turn back time to March 8, 2014, when Flight MH370 of Malaysia Airlines took off from Kuala Lumpur en route to Beijing, China. The aircraft was a Boeing 777-200ER, a twin-engine wide-body jet manufactured by Boeing in the United States. On board were 239 people, 227 passengers, and 12 crew members. MH370 took off like any other routine flight. It climbed to cruising altitude, leveled off, and flew north, passing over Malaysian airspace and entering the skies above Vietnam's section of the South China Sea. Then, unusual events began to unfold. To this day, many details remain unclear about what happened after that moment. However, based on the official investigation and multiple independent studies, the most widely accepted hypothesis is that this was not a simple accident. It is very likely that someone on board deliberately made the aircraft disappear and continued flying for hours after it dropped off civilian radar. Why do investigators believe this? One of the earliest signs came when MH370 crossed Igari, the waypoint marking the handover from Malaysian to Vietnamese air traffic control. At that exact point, the aircraft's transponder suddenly stopped transmitting. This device is critical. It allows air traffic control to track and identify aircraft on secondary radar. Importantly, the transponder did not shut off randomly. During the last 37 seconds before the signal vanished, it stopped sending altitude data, but continued transmitting other information. This means that someone in the cockpit deliberately turned the selector knob to a mode that stopped altitude reporting instead of switching it off or setting it to standby. A precise and intentional action. Moments later, the aircraft made an abrupt left turn. The maneuver was so sharp that Boeing experts confirmed the autopilot would never have allowed such a move. To execute it, the pilot had to disconnect the autopilot and take manual control. This strange turn occurred exactly during the handover between Malaysian and Vietnamese controllers, a timing that caused a significant delay in detecting the aircraft's disappearance. Even more suspicious, this turn steered the plane away from Thailand's military air defense zone, an area where any unidentified aircraft would normally be tracked closely. This evasive route allowed the aircraft to skirt just outside the boundary of this sensitive zone without triggering alarm. These details suggest that whoever controlled the plane had an intimate understanding of regional airspace and how the air traffic control system works at night. Another key piece of evidence involves the plane's satellite communication system, known as ACARS, Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System. After the plane silently turned back toward Malaysia and all radio contact was lost, ground stations attempted to send messages to the aircraft via ACARS, as usual. There was no response. This indicated that ACARS was no longer functioning. If ACARS had simply lost signal, the system would have sent an error message. If someone had intentionally logged out of ACARS, that action would also have been recorded. Yet in MH370's case, there was no trace at all. The only way for ACARS to fall completely silent is to cut power to the system. However, less than 30 minutes later, something astonishing happened. The plane's satellite data unit suddenly powered back on and automatically sent a logon request. How is that possible if the system had been completely shut down? To understand this, we need to know how a Boeing 777's electrical system works. The plane has 4 engine-driven generators, 2 for each engine, and any one of them can power ACARs. To shut down the system entirely, someone would have to turn off all 4 generators at the same time. A drastic and deliberate act. Even then, the aircraft still has an auxiliary power unit, APU, that automatically starts up if the main generators are cut. If someone manually turns the APU off and on, it will not restart automatically. At that point, the final source of electricity would be the ram air turbine, RAT, which only powers essential flight controls, not communications or autopilot. In other words, it takes deep technical knowledge to completely disable ACARs. The fact that the system later reconnected automatically indicates 2 things. First, there was no catastrophic electrical failure. And second, when it came back online, there was no identifying data about the flight or the airline. This shows that someone deliberately interfered with the system from the cockpit. What the person responsible may not have anticipated is that wiping the flight ID cannot stop the satellite from performing periodic handshakes, even without identification data. The satellite continues to send hourly pings to confirm that the link between the ground station and the aircraft is still active. 7 such handshakes were recorded after MH370 vanished from radar. The first and last were related to the system's relogon. These mysterious pings revealed that the plane kept flying for several hours after losing all contact with air traffic control. By analyzing the timing of each handshake, investigators were able to estimate the aircraft's final path. Though these signals seem simple, they contain crucial clues. But none of this is new information. So why has the search for MH370 become active again? The answer depends on whom you ask. Some sources are optimistic, saying that modern technology can now do what was impossible 10 years ago. Others are skeptical, suggesting that finding something new about MH370 may be more a hopeful dream than a realistic possibility. The first search for MH370 began immediately after the disappearance and lasted nearly 3 years. In January 2017, after thousands of hours of deep-sea exploration and hundreds of millions of dollars, the official search was called off in frustration. All that was recovered were 2 small pieces of debris that had drifted ashore, one in South Africa and another on Rodriguez Island, Mauritius. In the following years, about 30 other fragments suspected to belong to MH370 were discovered along the African coast, Madagascar, and the Western Indian Ocean. None of these fragments, however, revealed what had happened inside the cockpit on that fateful night. Now, the search has been restarted, led by the company Ocean Infinity. This is not their first involvement. Ocean Infinity previously conducted a search from January to June 2018. Although they did not find the aircraft, they demonstrated remarkable potential in deep-sea exploration using advanced technology. Ocean Infinity operates a fleet of specialized ships equipped with remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, and autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, robotic eyes that can scan the ocean floor at great depth and with extraordinary accuracy. In 2019, the company successfully located the wreck of the massive Korean cargo ship Stella Daisy, which sank in 2017, using 4 AUVs simultaneously. Their unique advantage lies in speed. With multiple underwater robots working in parallel, they can cover vast areas in a fraction of the time needed by traditional methods. During the 2018 search for MH370, Ocean Infinity initially planned to survey 25,000 square kilometers, but ended up covering 112,000 square kilometers, an area 33 times larger than Hanoi, nearly the size of New York State, or equivalent to Bulgaria, within just 3 months. Since then, Ocean Infinity has expanded its fleet and upgraded its technology. This provides a solid foundation for relaunching the hunt for the world's most mysterious aircraft. The new contract between Ocean Infinity and the Malaysian government, the official investigative authority, will last for 18 months. And here's the extraordinary part. If they do not find the aircraft, Ocean Infinity will not receive a single cent. Under the no fine, no fee arrangement, the company will be paid $70 million only if they succeed. If they fail, they bear the full cost of ships, equipment, and manpower for a year and a half, an enormous gamble in both reputation and money. Such high stakes indicate that Ocean Infinity must possess new data or insights unavailable before. To understand what that could be, we need to revisit those final 7 satellite handshakes. You've probably seen these pings displayed as 7 arcs on a map, like ripples radiating from an invisible point in the Indian Ocean. But what do they mean? Each handshake represents a brief exchange between the plane and the Inmarsat satellite, similar to a crude form of GPS. From these signals, investigators know the exact time the satellite sent a ping and how long it took the plane to respond. This delay, called the BTO, burst timing offset, reveals the aircraft's distance from the satellite at that moment. By analyzing these small time differences, investigators plotted MH370's likely path, not by sight, but through mathematics and logic. Unlike GPS, this system involves only one satellite, meaning the aircraft could have been anywhere on a huge circle at each handshake. Investigators eliminated the northern half of each circle because no radar systems there detected the plane. This made a southern route across the Indian Ocean far more plausible and guided the initial search zone. In addition to timing, another piece of information, called BFO, burst frequency offset, measures changes in signal frequency caused by the aircraft's relative motion to the satellite. This Doppler shift effect, similar to the changing pitch of a passing ambulance siren, helped investigators determine whether the plane was flying toward or away from the satellite, climbing or descending. These extremely subtle details allowed analysts to reconstruct the final possible flight paths of MH370. Recently, however, new data has emerged. Experienced pilots Captain Patrick Belliot and Jean-Luc Marchand studied the Boeing 777's electronic systems and Malaysia Airlines procedures, extracting every bit of information from the satellite data. But another approach came from Richard Godfrey, an avionics engineer who spent years studying something seemingly unrelated, WSPR, Weak Signal Propagation Reporter. WSPR is a global network used by amateur radio operators to study how radio signals travel over long distances. If a large object, like an aircraft, passes between 2 WSPR stations, it slightly distorts the signal, and these distortions are recorded in a public global database. Godfrey developed algorithms to filter and analyze WSPR data, essentially using it like a passive radar system. Unlike traditional radar, WSPR records a new data point every 2 minutes. This means that during MH370's hours-long flight, its presence could have left faint, unnoticed traces. Most models, including those by Captain Belliot, assumed that MH370 flew south in a straight line to avoid detection, but Godfrey's analysis suggests otherwise. The plane still headed south, but with slight course changes, possibly to avoid busy air traffic corridors. Even more intriguing, near the end of the flight, when fuel was likely running out, WSPR data indicates that the aircraft may have flown a figure-8 pattern for a short period. Was this an intentional maneuver, a desperate act, or a final search for a ship or a witness before crashing into the ocean? We still don't know. Godfrey also compared his calculated final crash site with flight simulator data recovered from Captain Zahari's home computer. One of Zahari's simulated routes closely matches the area where WSPR data suggests MH370 ended. If true, this is no coincidence and adds credibility to Godfrey's findings. So, where do things stand now? Last year, Ocean Infinity presented a plan for a new search focusing on 3 main zones. After months of negotiations, a preliminary agreement was reached in December 2024, even though the formal contract has not yet been signed. By February of this year, despite ongoing procedures, Ocean Infinity began deploying equipment. On February 26th, the new search officially resumed. Where are they searching? On the map, you can track Ocean Infinity's ship Armada 7806 moving across the Indian Ocean. The orange and red areas mark previous search zones, while the white outlined areas are new. 2 rectangular regions on either side of the 7th arc, the final satellite contact point. The southern rectangle aligns almost exactly with the area proposed by Captains Bailio and Marchand, while the jagged northern area corresponds with Godfrey's model. These zones have been approved by the Malaysian government. With better technology, more precise data, and greater determination than ever before, there is renewed hope that MH370 will finally be found, not out of mere curiosity, but because 239 lives and hundreds of waiting families deserve an answer after 11 long years.